Another town, another place, another game, another chair to its face. We're throwing chairs at Motörhead through the ages, the Victor Vran expansion by Haemimont Games. It's on the Tropico 5 engine. You can pick it up for that price difference between US and Canadian seems a bit suspect. $11.99 to $15.99. I don't know how currency works. What is it? Motörhead Through the Ages is a wild tour through the mythos of the loudest band in the world. Bring the mighty Snaggletooth back to life with the help of Lemmy and Lloyd Kaufman. Harness the power of the eternal Motörhead to defeat frightening new enemies in 3 demon-infested worlds, entwined with the songs of the band. So let's, kick some chairs at it. 1 chair means it's garbage. 2 chairs means it's meh. 3 chairs means it's pretty good. 4 chairs means it's awesome. We got our categories of doom mixed with the working shiny sounds, controls, and fun. So let's kick this off. Motörhead. Did it motor your head, Vedden?
How did it motor all through my brain organ? Well, over here on the Ubuntu 1604 LTS box of business with an 8150 powered by 980 displayed at UHD, which I didn't bother with this game because it's got some performance issues. Yeah, it ran all right. I mean, the only big issue I had with this is the menu lag, which was a real issue in the original Victor Vran, which has since been fixed, but this DLC brought a lot of that nightmare fuel back. But for the most part, I mean, on high, it's holding a solid 60 FERPs. But it definitely has the performance issues of the original game. Kind of sad to see that. Hope it gets ironed out. But yeah, some of that herky-jerk pop-in stuff, it's enough to ding it a chair, but still a solid 3. I think this one's got a good shot.
Yeah, we had some issues a while ago with some online play with Victor Vran, where sometimes you wouldn't be able to join people's games, despite the fact that the games themselves were the people were online on Steam. You could ping them, but that still happens, and it gets a little laggy when there are a lot of enemies on screen, and that happens a lot in this DLC. Oh boy! So on Fedora 24 64-bit. With the i7 6700K and the GTX 980, it gets 3 chairs.
Yeah, and over here, it takes almost a full second of jank for the game to show the stats when you hover over an item. And in several of the DLC areas, especially the Orgasmatron boss fight, there's a bit of frame rate hitching. That's when the frame rate is doing like 90, as was on my end. It usually holds around 90 with everything on turbo. Ever since they fixed the performance regressions with the newer NVIDIA drivers, it will drop down to like 20 and then back to 90. And that causes that teeny tiny bit of hitching where it slows down and then goes right back up. It gets a bit annoying, and it happened a lot. Now, I had over 30 hours of game time before this bit of DLC came out, and I don't remember it doing this often. So yeah, 3 chairs.
All right, well, that is 3 chairs for mixed with working. Up next is shiny and sounds. Ven, does it glisten? Does it shine? Does it blow at your pussies?
All over your face, neck, and chest, baby. When Victor Vran entered early access in early 2015, it looked great compared to a lot of the track that we were seeing starting to flood the market. Unfortunately, in 2017, it looks mostly the same, which not so great. I mean, I'm not saying it's fugly by any standard, but this engine is definitely starting to show its age. Now, graphically, the DLC slaps some Motörhead posters on the walls and throws a few Lemmy statues in along with guitars, a smattering of new baddies, and some bosses from Motörhead lore. They're all done competently, however. When the novelty of all that business wears off, you're still looking at Victor Vran in all of its 2015 fidelity. Now, it does sound like Victor Vran with the added bonus soda of the Motörhead blaring in the background, but keep in mind, it's only 13 tracks, and while that's not bad for 10 quid DLC, it can get just a touch repetitive. The only real legitimate complaint I have for the sounds is the barkeep, voiced by Lloyd Kaufman. Now, I read his interview in Glixel, and he sounded like he was wicked excited to do this project, recorded it in Long Island, I do believe. But I don't believe anyone gave this gentleman, anyone at all gave this gentleman the slightest bit of direction, resulting in almost all of his lines coming across as phoned in, even though they clearly weren't, if his interview is to be believed. Shiny. It looks good. It looks Victor Vran. Victor Vran's not ugly. Kind of digging it. Sounds, it's Motörhead. Hard to fuck that up. But it's not perfect. But it's definitely just a little bit of metal. So we're sticking with that 3. That's high as I can count this evening.
Oh yeah, it's same old Vran style, same old Vran substance. I mean, normally when you're playing through a game and you're not really into the soundtrack or the sounds, you just put on some other music. And this game takes the liberty of doing that for you. And you get a decent smattering of Motörhead tracks, some of their greatest hits, as it were. There are a couple songs I kind of wish that were in there, heroes. But, you know, beggars can't be choosers. The one thing that kind of bugged me about this was that as you change areas, the tracks will change. And then if you have to double back for whatever reason, the track restarts again. So you don't get that far into songs, which is kind of annoying. Beyond that, everything looks about the same. I mean, yes, they introduced some new bad guys. Yes, there are some crazy Motörhead baddies. But, I mean, they all look like they belong in a Victor Vran game. So I can't really give it bonus points or take away points for that. I'll give it 3 though, because it's still consistently pretty good. Plus, soundtrack's pretty awesome.
There are issues though. Everywhere you look, there are textures fighting for the same depth coordinate. Posters and wall textures fighting over the z-axis as they're supposed to show on basically the exact same coordinate, and they don't, and that texture flickering effect happens. Now, I'm not a game developer, but I did used to make areas for Neverwinter Nights. And the Aurora engine toolset was awesome, and I learned how to stop Z-fighting pretty easily. Basically, all you need to do is to move one of the offending textures about 1 pixel up or down that axis, and it will stop. Seeing as I've never noticed anything similar to that in Victor Vran outside of this DLC, not VLC, I'm assuming Haemimont knows this too. So who the hell made these levels? I'm also not a big fan of the Kaufman-tary. I'm not. It's thankfully the soundtrack is so goddamn good. I feel like aesthetically speaking, this bit of DLC still deserves to walk away with 3 chairs.
Well, speaking of that, 3 chairs for Shiny and Sounds. Up next is the controls. Ben?
Okay, it's Victor Vran, one of the first action RPGs on Linux to shove all the business on a controller and map it logically out of the fuck mothering box, baby. Really, my only complaint is the same one I had when we first reviewed Victor Vran. The items in the card menus where you're selecting your weapons, your cards, your demonic powers, and all that, especially the card menu, can become wicked. And I do mean genuinely wicked, unresponsive, to the point to where I have to reach over and use my dribble to sort things out to make it work, because I'm not patient. And if you're across the room, sitting on your couch, that's not something you're going to have the option of doing, because this game is best played sitting down, relaxing, only with a controller. But yeah, that's enough to ding at a chair, because that hasn't been fixed, and that's been an issue forever. And with the input menu lag, and it's like it puts these resources for some of this business in this game in fucking Mordor it has to access before it gets back to you. Everything does work, but it just feels jank, and you don't want to feel jank. Not with your Motörhead, baby. But I'm going to fill you 3 chairs.
Yeah, it's same old Vran. So you get the same old bad camera. Oh yeah, that's definitely a thing. Listen, give us an option to rotate the map, or better yet, make the map rotate with the camera. Other than that, it's the same Victor Vran control scheme. I don't really have any problems with it. The multiplayer menu always takes a little bit of getting used to. That's kind of a Vranism that I'm not going to ding at a chair for, because that's how it always worked. And it's my fault for not playing multiplayer Vran for a couple months before going back to this. So I'll give it 4 chairs.
I noticed one issue with the Steam controller. Yeah, I got my mistress right here, and if you start the game and your Steam controller is off, like it usually is, the game will default to mouse and keyboard. And then you turn it on, and it doesn't change to controller. You have to go to the options menu after you've already gone in game and tried to move with the controller, and it says, oh, if you want to play the game with the controller, you need to change that in the options menu. It's like, really? Really? But that's just a bit of a nitpick. So as far as controls go, this gets 4 chairs.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that tallies out to 3 chairs because lowest score always takes it. So, moving on to fun. Ben, did you have fun playing Motörhead?
Short and sour. It's Victor Vran. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get the Torchlight Diablo ARPG goodness that's going through a bit of a goth phase. You get weapons, you get cards, you get demonic powers, then you get good. And somewhere during all that slaughter, you learn to juggle that business so you don't constantly get killed to death. The Motörhead Through the Ages DLC changes exactly fuck nothing about those parts of the game. And that's good. What it brings to the table is this. Fan service. It brings it in spades. Yes.
The Ace of Spades?
Easy joke I didn't go for, Pedro. Thanks for throwing it in there anyway. Yeah. You get some wicked cool looking levels, a few skin packs for existing models, attack guitars, that's neat bonus soda for that, mixed in with a few admittedly neat demonic powers with the bombers and all that business. I enjoy that. In all fairness, you do get those aforementioned 13 Motörhead tracks, but lads, sorry to report, I'm just not feeling it. Just from the get-go, the way they tied Victor Vran and Motörhead together, it is what it is, and what it is bad. It's laughably bad how they tried to stitch these two stories together. It's like, okay, fucking whatever. I mean, after you get over that, you have a little bit of the fun, because you're looking at the statues, the posters, all the Motörhead stuff, the new bosses, all neat in their own right, but after an hour or so, your brain organ, what it does is it puts that business on ignore, and guess what? You're just stuck playing some new Victor Vran levels. Again, nothing terribly wrong with that, but that's not what you paid for. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's what my experience was. Also, I do kind of, sort of, absolutely, definitely 100% feel that giving me the hella overpowered axe at the very beginning sucked most, if any, challenge out of this DLC, because you just whip out the purple guitar and skullfuck all the things. There's not much to it. Check this out. If you pick this up, so you can take an interactive tour through Motörhead lore, you're probably going to have a good time. 10 quid. It's not that expensive if you already have the base game, which is currently $19.99. If you're looking for much more than that, I'm going to have to say, something you probably want to skip. Got to give it a 2.
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that we currently exist in a world in which Lloyd Kaufman is still alive, despite the fact that he's like 1,000 years old and Lemmy isn't. Really though, like an expansion like this should deliver a similar experience to the base game, but adds some neat stuff, and it doesn't really. It kind of falls flat in that regard. It's the exact same game, which I mean makes sense, but there's not much else to it. There's a couple new weapons. There's a couple new powers. You can call them the bomber. You can do that stuff. I found it kind of meh. It's nice that there are a bunch of new levels. Yeah, you can wander around and kill stuff and then get flooded with a ton of enemies that you gotta kite around and blow up. And that's basically what Motörhead, what Victor Vran devolves through at the end of the game anyways. So it's not really doing anything new. Like Ven said, this pretty much just boils down to fan service. If you like Motörhead, then yeah, you're gonna derive at least some enjoyment from it because you're killing monsters while listening to Motörhead. It's kind of what I do in my spare time anyways. And I mean, one final little nitpick, and I brought it up in the segment before this, but god damn it should be the Orgasma Train. I get that the song is called Orgasmatron, but that implies a giant fucking mechanical Voltron-S robot with a giant metal Voltron dick. This is a train.
It's phallic enough, Jordan. It's phallic enough.
Again, thank you, Alfred Hitchcock. I get how symbolism works. But that being said, it should be Orgasma Train. Anyways, it's perfectly serviceable, but it doesn't do much to enhance Victor Vran other than give you some new levels and some Motörhead related chuckles. So I gotta give it 2 chairs.
Well, honestly, I never thought I'd use the words padded gimmicky or boring to describe anything related to Victor Vran or Motörhead. I was wrong. Yeah. Now, I'm pretty sure Haemimont will be watching this review for no other reason that I'll probably send them a link. So I'll do my best to explain. I really like Victor Vran. It's what the console version of Diablo 3 eventually became, with a hell of a lot more variety to it. It's just a good game. It's a true hack and slash game, and a pretty fun one at that. When I say that the Motörhead DLC is padded, I don't mean the sheer insane number of side objectives and every single dungeon or area is loaded with. No. You see, that was already the case with the base game, and I'm okay with that. When I say padded, I mean level design in the DLC didn't have the same love put into it as the base game did. And most of the dungeons were simply thrown together and a bunch of enemies packed into random areas of the map with very little to no cohesion. It all looks like it's there to pad out the experience in hopes of justifying the price, with perhaps the most egregious example being how the gold reward for defeating one of the rock monument encounters, it spawns a big-ass circle around said monument, and it takes its sweet-ass time to do it. It just feels like a waste of time. Then there's the final boss fight. I hate gimmicky boss fights so goddamn much. I'm not the only one either. If you ask anyone who's played Dark Souls which was their least favorite boss fight, my money's on most people saying it was a bit of chaos. The bed of chaos. Why? Because it's the most gimmicky of all boss fights in that game. And the Queen of the Damned, now that's not a spoiler since she's in the trailer, does the whole you can't damage her until you run around the level killing lazily designed souls of the damned, and you need to do that 4 times throughout that frickin' boss fight. It's just a padded fucking waste of time. Weren't it for the fact that the song Queen of the Damned played on a loop throughout the whole fight, I probably would have said fuck it from how bored I was by the end. A final boss fight should never, ever be boring. Thankfully, outside of everything I mentioned, more Victor Vran is a good thing. But a good thing only takes you so far. 2 chairs.
All right, well, that's 2 chairs for fun, and we tally all that up to make 2 chairs for the total for Motörhead, the game. I mean, final thoughts.
Okay. Hey, man, it's the thing. It's priced reasonable. You know, there's $10 worth of stuff in this. I mean, for the soundtrack alone, plus you want some Motörhead memorabilia and the digital. Hey, Haemimont, send us that gift pack. Call me. That's pretty cool. I mean, I dig it. Multiplayer's all right, but I dug Victor Vran, but I can't say. I don't want to call this a skin pack. It's not. But yeah, it's just more Victor Vran with its Motörhead theme to it as opposed to its own thing that it's trying to be. And if we're going to be perfectly honest, I mean, if this DLC was genuinely going for authenticity, it would have at least dropped a little bit of Nazi memorabilia while I was playing. Go look that up.
You get to kill some Nazi zombie skeletons things as you're going along, and at one point you have to defeat the metal war pig that the Führer supposedly built. But no, this bit of DLC wasn't killed by death, as it were. It was killed by its padded, gimmicky, and boring design choices. No, why? Why did you do this?
I think maybe this would have been a little timelier if it was released before Lemmy died. I mean, this game had quite a few delays since it's announced, so I'm glad that they released it. I'm glad that it's a thing. Did I enjoy playing it? It was all right. If you like Motörhead and Victor Vran, pick it up. If you don't,